Hi everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. This is Crystal Brown with She Sews. I appreciate you subscribing to my channel and sharing it. I really do appreciate the feedback that I've received so far, and you really encourage me to keep doing this. Today we're going to talk a little bit about planning ahead. As most of you have already planted your seedlings, there's so much time now that we have to plan ahead. And so I want to encourage you to take a few minutes to think about your garden and your upcoming plans for the next few months, because as we all know, time flies very fast. And next thing you know, it's going to be time to get everything in the ground, in our containers, and reap the harvest of all this hard work. So let's just start with seed packets, okay? So for those of you who have already planted their seedlings, right now we are just waiting for them to grow and mature. We will not actually transplant those out into our containers or raised beds or ground until March, April. Okay, some people in North Texas, we are in planting zones 8A and 8B, depending on where you are in North Texas. Some people plant after St. Patrick's Day. Some people plant after Easter. So depending on where you live and what type of garden you plan, you can do either of those. This year, I actually plan to try to put a few things in containers after St. Patrick's Day, and then a few things in containers after April. I'm doing a little experiment to see what's best for my yard. The first thing, when you look at seed packets, you'll see, remember I showed you that little container that has all of my seed packets, but you will see on the back of a seed packet when you need to plant things. So a lot of these can be direct sown outside. You don't have to start them as seedlings. We only started tomatoes and peppers and a few flowers, different varieties of tomatoes, peppers, and flowers indoors. Some herbs also need to be started indoors. And then when they're a little bit more mature, after March or April, you can put them outside. But the things that can be direct sown outdoors, will say that on the package. So here's an example of okra. It's called Star of David okra. You can see on the pack, it will tell you that you can direct sow these outside. It'll tell you the ideal temperature, the seed depth, okay? And then what's really important here is how much full sun they need. It says these need a minimum of 8 to 12 hours of sun. That's really important, okay? So as you're thinking about what you want to grow in your backyard or your porch or your front yard, wherever you're allowed, think about how much sun they need. If you look at cucumbers, here's a type of cucumber. I'm actually going to do a pickling cucumber and then a slicing cucumber. Both of them say sprout within 7 to 14 days, half-inch depth, ideal temperature 70 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. These are not frost hardy, I'll tell you that as well. And then they need a minimum of 8 to 12 hours of sun. Okay, so that's really important. Looking at okra. And then I have I'm going to try for the first time these Kentucky Wonder beans. These beans, let's say, direct sow after your last frost. And it doesn't say how much sun these need, but usually things that are in the spring and summertime need at least 8 to 12 hours. Some say minimum of 6, depending on the variety and the type of vegetable you're growing. But what is really important when you're thinking about what you're going to grow, it needs to be a spring and summer crop. Because if you plant something that's a cold hardy vegetable in the spring and summer, it is not going to do well, because some of them do not tolerate the heat very well. So that's something to think about, okay? You don't want to plant cold weather crops in the Texas heat. It's just too much. Now, when you think about the type of seeds you want to get grow outside, you need to plan ahead for that, because you want to, if you're going to be doing containers, then you want to have purchased enough containers. I'm going to show you some of the containers that we did. Before I get to containers, let's talk about sun. On a Saturday or a day that you're home, it's important for you to track the sun. So you want to, let's just say your backyard, you want to track the number of hours of full sun that your yard is getting. So from sunrise to sunset, track how much time and locations are sunny versus shady, because that will help you know where to plant your vegetables. So and another thing is you want to make sure that you place your vegetables, your garden area, you plant it somewhere where it's going to be easy for you to water them. So for me, I planted mine pretty close to my water hose, so that when I water every day or every other day, in the summer is about every day because I have raised beds, I actually can just pull the hose, water everything, put it back in. But if your garden is on the opposite side of your water hose, then it's just going to be a little bit more work, but it's doable. I just want to share some containers now, okay? So here's an example of a container I bought at the dollar store. This was $1. It has little spots here where you can pop this out so that it has proper drainage. And I'm going to plant some of my flowers in these pots that I got for $1. I also bought these at the dollar store. They're stackable 3-tier planters. And so if you look in here, actually Dollar Tree is where I bought these, and the blue containers. If you look at these, you can actually stack multiple on top of each other. And these are only $1 each. So you think about a bag of potting mix plus this. I actually bought 16 of these because I'm going to put my herbs in here. So I'm going to put like basil, thyme, and then I'll maybe do 2 or 3 high because I don't want them to get too high that they fall over. Those are really inexpensive options that you can get at the dollar store, so think about that. There are also buckets, 5 and 7 gallon buckets that you can get at Lowe's, Home Depot, different areas too that you can drill holes at the bottom if you're doing containers. If you're doing raised beds, those are for sale on Amazon. If you have somebody who's handy around, or if you are yourself, you can build them yourself out of cedar or pine, any type of wood. There are different ways to make raised beds, but for those of you who are just starting, I recommend containers. It's the easiest way to get started. It's the most inexpensive way to get started. You'll just need your potting mix and your containers. Another option I found on Amazon, and I'm always watching for sales. These are grow bags. See that? So this is a 5-gallon grow bag, a 7-gallon grow bag, and a 10-gallon grow bag. So I've asked around from the other sites that I follow on Facebook, and the consensus is if you're going to grow an indeterminate tomato, which an indeterminate tomato is basically a tomato that will continue to grow and grow and grow as long as you prune and take care of it, you need to use a 10-gallon grow bag for that. If you buy a determinate tomato plant, like a cherry tomato or other varieties that say determinate, that means there's a determined amount of vegetable or fruit that you can get from that tomato plant. And they're a little bit smaller. Usually they don't grow as tall. They kind of bush out more. So those you could use probably a 7-gallon. Peppers, you could use a 5 or a 7, and you could put 2 in each container for peppers because they like to touch each other. Tomatoes need space. They need the air to give them a good breeze. They don't need to be touching each other. Okay, so those are just some inexpensive options that you can find on Amazon or Dollar Tree, or also, like I said, Lowe's or Home Depot. Containers are really important, and if you plan ahead, you can catch them on sale, and you can just prepare. But you want to have 1 container per plant. I'm going to try to do okra in 7-gallon, but I might need 10-gallon as well for that. And remember, if you're going to do an indeterminate tomato, it needs a little bit more root depth and a little bit more space. But your determinants, which I had recommended previously that everybody at least try a cherry, probably a 7-gallon or a 5-gallon is sufficient for that, okay? Okay, the next thing I want to show you is my very first drawing of my very first garden. What I would recommend that you get is some like graph paper. And you can see here, I looked in my backyard. I tracked where the sun hits my garden the most. And I only get about 8 hours of sun in my backyard. Some people get a lot more. It depends on how and where your house is facing. But if you can get some graph paper and just get creative, each square was a square foot for me. And this was my original garden design. Of course, it changed a lot. And this year, because I'm going to be using more containers, I opened it up a little bit to give me some more space. And when I say open up, I actually had to use chicken wire, and I put a rectangle using fence posts around in an area around a little door that I can come in and out, because I have a lot of squirrels in my neighborhood. So that's another thing you want to plan ahead. If you have a lot of rodents, animals, you want to plan a way to keep them out. Depending on where you live, that may or may not be a problem. So, with all of that, I cannot stress to you enough the importance of planning ahead. And just because we want to focus on the spiritual aspect of this as well, the Bible says in Proverbs 29:18, where there is no vision, the people perish. My notes are above. So, make sure you plan ahead, and I wish you the very best. Have a great week, everyone, and don't forget to sow the seed. Bye.